This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I am lucky enough to be with the pilot in command, Bill Evans himself, the CEO, the founder of Liberty Fox. What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing good, Jay. Thank you so much. It's been a great week so far and just looking forward to the weekend.
I bet you are. We were just talking about flying. We have a shared passion there and also agency owner. So tell me, man, where did you grow up? And did that have any impact on you being an entrepreneur?
Yes, so I actually grew up in Northeast Philadelphia. My parents still live there. And, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father took a stab at it and ultimately didn't work out. But, it definitely runs in generational blood. And I figured it was my chance to do some trailblazing.
Was Liberty Fox the first company you tried to start?
Yeah, I didn't, I had ideas before that, but this is the first one that I actually really started and brought to fruition.
Got it. And how did you start it? When did you start it and what was the process?
Well, I started the company back in 2010, so 14 years ago. How did I start it? I got laid off from my last job and I was unemployed. And basically, the company had actually gone belly up. They were out of business. And so I was enjoying unemployment for about 2 weeks before I was completely and utterly bored. I couldn't watch another episode of Judge Judy and I couldn't find myself going to the bar at 12 o'clock in the afternoon every day. So it actually worked out that the customers that had worked with my previous company, since that product no longer existed, they had reached out to me personally to ask me help them transition to something else. And then the company that actually acquired their tech reached out to me and asked me to repurpose it. So that kind of was the beginning.
Hmm. Did you get like the immediate like, oh, this is going to be a business, or were you just like, this is something I'm going to do for now because I don't want to be unemployed?
Not at all, actually. It's kind of funny. I wasn't thinking business, and I can actually almost kind of thank my first customer, who's still a friend of mine and also a fellow aviator. When he bought the healthcare, or when he not healthcare, when he bought the technology for that business, he asked me, "Hey, well, can I hire you to repurpose it?" I said, "Sure." He said, "You should start a business." I said, "Why?" He's like, "Well, so I can't sue you." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." So, as his recommendation, he was being tongue in cheek, but he was also being serious. I started Liberty Fox and then started doing independent consulting at the first. That's the way it started out.
It's funny how many like actual action items come from people kind of tongue in cheek joking, because I've had that same experience a lot of times along the way. Somebody will say something and they don't want to, be telling you to do it, but they're like, they're kind of telling you to do it in a nice way. So, where did Liberty Fox the name come from, by the way? I've always wanted to know.
It's a fun little bit of trivia. So the Fox is pretty straightforward. The neighborhood I grew up in Philadelphia is called Fox Chase. So I just stole that straight from where I came from, where the company officially started. And then the Liberty is a little bit of a double-edged thing. So we are primarily an onshore organization. We wanted to kind of portray a little bit of patriotism and the liberty. But then it's also a fun fact that in the 1800s, Northeast Philadelphia actually tried to secede from Philadelphia and call themselves Liberty City. So it's another fun
Wow.
fact about Northeast Philly. Back then, it was like a day carriage ride downtown. And they're like, "Why are we Philly? Why do you keep gobbling up these neighborhoods? We're paying all these city wage taxes, and it's a day drive to the city. We shouldn't be Philly." They obviously failed, and Liberty City was never born, but it's a fun little fact.
That is a very fun fact. That may be the funnest fact I've learned this week. That's a great. I did not even. I'm gonna have to look that up. That seems
Yeah,
like a very. I love that sort of. It's always weird to me that like we live in this current state of whatever it is, but like it hasn't been like this and it won't be like this. We're just like in whatever it
yeah.
is today is like what we're living in. But like 100, 200 years ago, whatever they were trying to secede and make a whole thing. I love the history of that. So tell me about the company. How did you go from doing independent consulting to like going, okay, I need to hire somebody else to work with me or for me?
Oh, it was an experiment, honestly. So I had been, so I ran the company from 2010 to 2013 all by myself, just doing job after job, bouncing between a couple different companies and just kind of making sure that I was lining up gigs so that they were good to go. But then I got a couple requests come in at once and I was like, there is no way I can do this. I'm kind of curious. Maybe I should consider hiring. So I had like we'll call it two and a half fractional clients. And I did the math and it was going to be about 70 to 80 hours a week. So I was like, all right, well, maybe I can hire. So I did the risk assessment in my head. I said, okay, well, look, worst case scenario, I fail at hiring somebody and I have to work 80 hours a week for 6 months. Good for me. I'll make some extra money. Worst case scenario, it's still doable. So the risk is very low, but let me try to hire. So I ended up hiring two part-timers who split one project and then I took the other project myself. I was still very much a dev back then. And one of those part-timers is still with me right now as my longest tenured employee.
I have the same story, and one of my longest tenured employees is actually working with you guys, and it's the same. It's like it's a testament to a good business owner, I think, that somebody wants to work with you for more than 5 minutes, or a week, or a month, or a year, and they hang around because you treat them like a human being, and you treat them like I think corporate America has ruined families calling their employees business. I mean, a family, but I think you do feel that, right? I mean, you spend more time with
Yeah.
those folks than you do your own family, so it's kind of hard not to grow attached to them.
Yeah, 100%. We treat that like, everybody here, like I stand up for you. I will support you. I'll defend you within reason and I will also help you grow. And so this guy came on as a junior developer part-time and now as a full-time tech lead, basically in charge of my entire technology division. And, I've watched him grow over 11 years.
Hmm. And what are some of the lessons you learned during that kind of initial hiring phase? Like, what is a good tip for somebody who's trying to hire for the first time?
Oh, that's a good question. It is initially terrifying and your natural reaction is going to be to micromanage, and you really can't do that. You got to give people some room to scrape their knees and make mistakes. And the other thing is, I could jokingly equate it to having a baby. There's never a good time for the first hire. It's just
Right,
do it or don't do it, right? Just like, don't be like, well, maybe next year, next month, or maybe in 3 months. You're always going to have a reason to wait a little bit longer. Just take the plunge. In the worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, and the right people will get that. If you're a small building, the couple people that I hired, I was working out of my apartment. I had a 3-bedroom apartment, and I converted one of those bedrooms to be an office for two guys, and they would come and knock on my door and work in there. And I was like, "Look, my risk is low. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, sorry guys, you had a job for a couple months."
right. No, I love that. What and speaking of skin knees and broken bones, what's the biggest mistake you think you've made so far, and what was the lesson you learned from it?
Well, in all of my business,
Whole business. I'll give you a minute because it's been 14 years, so like there's probably
yes,
one or two along the way, but
I mean, I would say a challenge I still have today, and it's really hard because we talk about culture and family. Everybody always says hire slow and fire fast, and I tend to be the exact opposite: hire fast and fire slow. I don't really hire fast. I tend to be more methodical with my hiring, but I'm very slow to fire. Probably give people one too many chances, and I've allowed that with certain employees in the past that are no longer with me. I've allowed them to become a toxic cancer and damage my culture. And if I was going to say where that falls on me is I allowed culture. I'm very sensitive to company culture and have been for probably about 8 years. But early on, I kind of just let the culture evolve ad hoc without any guardrails. And before I knew it, we were turning into like corporate America. I'm like, we don't have 50,000 employees. We have 10. Why do we have rules about who can touch the air conditioner? Like, so yeah, so I would just say my biggest mistake was be sensitive to culture, be sensitive to people's feelings. They're still people. And I would say loyalty truly, like, I mean, skill is important. But if skill is in the ballpark of what you want, loyalty wins.
yeah, no, that's a great point. And somebody told me one time early when I started this business was, first impressions are always correct for employees, right? And I found that to be probably the most true thing. Like, people are who they are, and can they improve and change? Yes, they can, obviously, but like the core stuff like dependability and communication, and like if that is off from the start, I have found that to be kind of consistent throughout the relationship. It doesn't really change or get better. Have you felt kind of the same way?
Yeah, what you're talking about, like essentially soft skills. Soft skills I've noticed are way harder to cultivate out of somebody than hard skills, right? I have trained hard skills over and over again. I've trained my staff on better software development, better practices, better SDLC life cycle, like, you name it. I've taught them new skills. I've taught them new languages. I've encouraged them to go think outside the box. Hard skills are way easier to teach than soft skills, and soft skills are pushing a boulder uphill. So if somebody is a little off on soft skills, you might be willing to take that plunge, but if they're way off, they're never going to get better.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. So tell me, who is the customer for you guys today, and has that changed over the course of your business? Are you serving different customers now than you did 10 years ago?
I would say not different, but more limited and rifled. We started kind of as the handyman. We fix all makes and models. We'll do whatever you want. Do you want us to fix a shingle on your roof? Do you want us to replace a window? Obviously, I'm using a metaphor because we're in software development, but we've gotten a lot more rifled. We've brought up the floor of project size that we can deal with. And we've gotten very targeted into the healthcare space and a few other industries, warehousing, logistics, but we really tried to change our brand image away from being generalist. And we don't advertise ourselves as a software development company anymore. We refer to ourselves as a software consultancy with specialties in
Hmm,
certain industries
hmm.
because companies like to work with companies that get their domain and understand their vertical. And when you say you do everything, that's really, even if you can, at the end of the day, what we do is really business workflow. And it applies to so many different industries, but they don't
Right.
want to hear that. They want you to pick a couple.
Yeah.
And so I would say that we're still doing very similar to what we did on the first day, just very particular with the customer base that we target.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I was gonna say I would be very impressed if you guys were actually changing shingles and windows as a software development shop. That would be
Hey, when they get
that
flooded, you
would
gotta
be a
give them good.
generalist. That would be the ultimate generalist. If you guys will also fix your office for you. How are you guys marketing today? Do you put a bunch of money into paid ads and SEO and whatever? Are you doing more traditional kind of BDR stuff where you're out at conferences? Is it a mix of it? What do you guys do to get your name out?
Great question. So that has been a 14-year experiment with lots of failures and a couple successes. We have not seemed to figure out the secret sauce around cold outreach, although we have a couple new experiments in 2024. We're kind of, re-engaging in that space. Um, we've actually been very dormant in the cold outreach space. We have had salespeople in the past, and they were great people that just weren't in a position to be successful. So you're looking at the salesperson of the business right here, as well as my business partner. And so what we've actually done is decided to direct our time into channel partners. And our channel partners represent over 90% of our inbound referrals. We pay them a commission in perpetuity on all business they bring in. And they tend to be very strategically aligned. They're talking to the same customers for different reasons. And it's a very reasonable introduction to connect us. And so I spend most of my sales time cultivating and empowering my channel partners. And then where the rest of my time I spend as a sales engineer, actually scoping out projects and then moving them forward.
That's a great point, and I don't know if you've seen Bob Moore's book is kind of exploding the ecosystem-led growth, which is basically channel partnerships and all sorts of stuff like that. How do you cultivate those relationships if at the time you don't have anything to offer them, right? Like, I mean, now, if we're going to work with a QA tools company, if I can give them a lead and I can say, hey, these guys need a tool, we can help implement it, but they need a tool, so we're going to send them to you guys, then there's like a very clear then they'll go, "Oh yeah, we'd love to work with you guys. You're bringing us business." How do you do that today if you don't have a one in the chamber when it comes to like we're going to give you business today? How do you make that appealing to them?
Well, that's a great question. I think what I've realized within reason is people don't necessarily need a referral and a bow, they don't necessarily need me to hand them business. What they want is for me to hand them relationships.
Yeah,
So what I do when I meet somebody, I make it very important that before the end of the call, I say, what is a good introduction to you? And I usually try to say, like, look, I understand what a good client is for you. Like Jay, I know what a good client would be for you. I mean, if it falls in my lap, I'm going to say, go talk to him.
sure.
But it's far less likely that I'm gonna have a client for you, but I may have a channel partner for you. And so I have a pretty large Rolodex of connectors, and I try to understand what a good connector would look like, a good synergy would be. And I usually leave a call, almost any call, offering somebody between 1 and 3 introductions, and that usually gets the same reciprocity on their end as attempting to get me some business. So that's one thing that I do with them, and then we just try to stay engaged with them. One thing I refer to them as channel partners, not referral partners,
Hmm.
because I want to make sure that we have some cadence, that we stay in touch, usually some kind of a quarterly recurring meeting that's sticky on the calendar. We do like a yearly channel partner appreciation event where we bring them all out and say, thank you so much. Regardless of whether you referred us business this year, you've chosen to put our hat on and our brand on, and represent us in some way, shape, or form. Thank you. Come have a cocktail and food on us.
No, I like that. That's a great idea. Yeah, I think that's Yeah, that's where I think a lot of people struggle with partnerships is they don't have the value to add immediately. So they go, well, why am I going to even reach out to these people? Because they don't, I don't have anything from them. I love the relationships. Like, hey, I know somebody, you know somebody. It's more of a networking that leads to partnerships kind of thing, which I think is actually how we met was from some networked person in our, I think it was Mac somewhere along the
Yes.
way. So, and that came from like another connection that I met from somewhere else. And it's just all these different, but I love the fact that you're kind of engaging in that like active networking to end yourself in a partnership. Cause that's, like you said, they're dealing with the same exact customers. Once you identify who those people are, why would you not work together? Why would you not pass business back and forth together? So I think that's a super powerful thing that seems to be on the rise again. Like, and have you seen Crossbeam, that Bob Moore's platform?
Yes. My business partner is very excited about it. He's been reading about it.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll have to both get on there because I have an account, I just haven't done anything with it yet. But that's the whole premise of that is to just share, partnership information and leads and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's going to be a big one that comes out of Philly. My wife's like, "Is that something you think you could invest in?" I'm like, I don't. I'll talk to Bob. We'll see. It's going to be a good one. So let's switch gears real quick. Three things that you're doing as a business owner to increase your longevity personally, like not business wise, but just personal, health wise, mental wise, whatever. I mean, it's a lot of stress and the job is not meant for some people. What are you doing to kind of stay sharp and to make this last as long as you can?
Great question. I think couple different things. I really enjoy learning. So, mental neuroplasticity. Like when I actually have some time to like veg out on the couch, I'm watching educational YouTube or, reading about something that I really want to know. So like I always love learning. I'm like my friends, my girlfriend calls me Wikipedia. So like that's something I just think is like as much as it's like, stressing the brain, it's also something that I relax with. And, as a fellow aviator, I actually find flying to be a form of meditation because you're so focused on the fact that you're flying an airplane that you're really not letting cross thoughts steal your mind. And as much as from an outside perspective, a non-aviator might go like, that's got to be so stressful. I feel so calm once I've like landed and parked the plane. I'm like, that was just an hour of like, relatively speaking, an empty mind,
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
so those are some things that I like to do that just really just, you have to have some me time, right? Like, within reason, I try to make sure that at least one day of the weekend is work free. I can't say I don't look at an email here or there, but I try to have at least one day of the weekend and ideally both. If I'm not super busy, ideally both, where I do not pull that laptop out and just respect my weekend and work harder during the week. Because if you work a little bit every day, you're going to burn out so bad.
Right. Yeah. No, those are great tips, and I feel the same way about flying. I think that's why I love it so much. It's like it's because you're in a flow state the whole time. I think, right? It's like an artist or like whoever who's like just doing something, and you're in your zone. You're checking dials. You're scanning for you're talking on the radio. You're doing all these things. There's no time to think. There's no time to worry about the laundry that's piling up or the dishes or like the kids or whatever. It's like and then you get down. You're like, holy shit, that was an intense but needed therapy session. So I totally
Yeah,
agree
well,
with that.
as a fellow entrepreneur, I feel like we all have some variation of ADHD.
Oh
So
yeah.
if that's a perfect way to satiate that.
Oh yeah. It's I mean, you couldn't get any better, man. You're just whistles and dials and bings and boops and
And
planes and wind and everything else. So I love that. All right. So last question, non-business related again. If you could do anything on earth and you knew you couldn't fail, what would it be?
like something like on my bucket list,
Sure.
I want to go to space and come back down just to do it. Like I'll do the Jeff Bezos way. I don't care, but I would love to see the curvature of the earth and come back to talk about it.
I love that. That is a shared answer to that question. A lot of people feel the same way. I don't know if I would be able to afford the Bezos ticket, but
And
I think
it's,
it
it's
would be
up there.
very cool. It's on my list too. I love that one. All right, if people want to reach you, Bill, directly, how do they do that?
You can just go right to my email. It's bill@libertyfoxtech.com. Liberty like the Liberty Bell, Fox like the animal, tech spelled TECH.
Beautiful. All right. Well, hope people reach out, and it's always good seeing you, brother. We'll have to have lunch. We'll go flying soon, and enjoy your weekend. All right.
Thank you so much, Jay. Same to you, sir.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. See ya.
Have a great day.